Hello, this is João or John from Brazil, and you are listening to Tale of the Manticore.
The following podcast is intended for a mature audience. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to Tale of the Manticore, Season 3. Like the creature from which it takes its name, Tale of the Manticore is a mashup, a crossbreeding between two different species of storytelling. Here you will find the unpredictability of old-school paper and dice games with the storycraft of a dark fantasy novel. No character is sacred, and none will be spared if the dice decide their fate is at hand. According to lore, the tail of a manticore is barbed with cruel iron spikes. There will be much pain in the days ahead. Last time on Tale of the Manticore. In the previous chapter, Tentir discovers something among the bodies at the site of the orcish battle. About half of the orcs have red paint on the bottom of their boots, marking them as members of the Bloodfoot tribe. The others bear black smudge-like tattoos on their forearms, and this symbol is not one anyone present can recognize. For lack of a better name, the companions begin to refer to this other group of orcs as the Black Cloud tribe. Achillia discovers something else among the bodies. At first, she takes the glint that catches her eye for gold, but it turns out to be the brass fittings of a small but heavy chest. Inside, the PCs find a large sum of coins. Along with the mushroom, the two elves know to denote a bribe or tribute. But who is paying whom, and for what? No one is certain, but it seems a good guess that the treasure was the cause of the battle. On the following day, the companions begin to move through what they now realize is Black Cloud territory. There's evidence of orcish activity found along the way that leaves little room for doubt. At the end of the day's travel, they see a woods and decide to spend the night there and take advantage of the concealment of the trees. But before they can reach it, they spot and are spotted by 3 more orcs. Surprisingly, instead of rushing into battle, the orcs turn and flee. The companions give chase, but they lose their quarry almost right away. Will the escaped orcs raise the alarm? And will the companions soon become the hunted? Chapter 12, Part 1, Day 12, Night. Mythic event meaning: move stalemate. Party status: Achillia, 7 out of 7 hit points. Cord, 10 of 11. Dureni, 6 of 6. Tentir, 5 of 6. Supplies: the companions have 11 portions of food and 6 of water. Spells available: Achillia has memorized Shrink and Message. Cord can cast Entangle and Locate plants and animals. The companions spend a few minutes retracing their steps and trying to rediscover the direction of the orc's passage.
"Here it is,"
called Tentir, just a little ways off from the rest of the group. By now, the woods had grown dark, and they were all relying on night vision. He continued as they joined him.
"See these trampled ferns? They went that way."
He pointed off to the northwest.
I wonder why they turned so abruptly. Those orcs were moving to the northeast, and then suddenly cut to their left. Well, there's no catching them now. We will go straight on, and with luck, we can avoid them,
said Dureni, pointing off in a direction perpendicular to the path of the orcs' flight.
"Them and their tribesmates," said
Tentir, nodding. Agreed Dureni.
We'll need to find a place to make camp, though. We cannot keep going through the night.
He was right. They were already exhausted, having pushed themselves in order to reach the woods in the first place. And then, chasing the orcs had drained the last of their energy.
A good hiding spot is what we need,
he said, pulling at his chin and looking worried.
But we should go at least another mile or 2 away from here. Try not to leave any tracks.
He led the way, walking by his younger brother and into the deep gloom of the forest. Tentir followed, and then Achillea, unsure how she was supposed to travel without leaving any signs of her passage, fell in behind, with Cord and Robin at her back. Did the orcs cut left to throw off their pursuers, or is there a different reason? If it was an evasive measure, it worked, but I think there's a chance they are actually avoiding this part of the woods deliberately. In order to keep things nice and chaotic, I'm going to randomize it. And since I have the action paused anyway, I think I'll just make all the rolls for the day right now. For the weather. 20? I was not expecting that. What kind of weather would be really helpful right now? More fog, I think, since the party's main goal is to stay out of sight. Stumble upon. A 17. A high roll, but it doesn't produce any result. Only a 1 or a 20 matters for that roll. Next up is for wandering encounters. We're back in the woods, meaning that a 4 to 6 on a d6 is a positive result. However, I think that foggy weather should have some real in-game benefit, so I'll knock it back to a 5 or 6 on a d6. I mean, 20s are rare, and they should make a difference. Here's the roll. A 5. Oh, brother. These guys just can't seem to pass more than a single day without running into trouble. As I've done before, I'm going to roll a high-low to determine what they encounter. Low will mean yet more orcs. This is Black Cloud territory after all. High will trigger a set-piece encounter I have in mind. On a d20. 15. Okay then. They first noticed the crows about an hour after they'd lost the trail of the escaped orcs and turned to the northeast. Navigating the woods was slow going, but not because it was difficult to see. Their infravision was almost as acute as their day vision. Furthermore, Durrani and Tentir traveled the forest at night regularly, and even Cord and Achillea had some experience doing so. The reason their travel was so slow was a combination of fatigue and from keeping up an effort to move quietly. At first, they thought it was working. Since losing the orcs, there had been no sign of any alarm raised. Durrani was even beginning to allow that Achillea might have been right about which tribe the escaped orcs belonged to, until they encountered the first group of crows. There must have been several hundred of the scavenger birds, and when the party came across them, the feathered host threw up such a chorus of squawking as to completely ruin the companions' attempt to keep quiet.
This is no good,
complained Durrani over the din, and quickly led the others away from the legion of birds. But, very strangely, after the party passed, the crows alighted from their perches among the branches in a great cloud of dark wings, and followed them, cawing all the while. Robin peeped timidly, shifting about on Achillea's head to show her discomfort. The crows overtook the party, and then settled into the trees a little further ahead, as if to block their progress. Durrani was happy to keep his distance.
Come, we should get away from all this noise,
he said, and cut to the right, moving east into the woods where the land began to dip. For a while, the birds left them alone, but just 20 minutes later, the party ran into another large group of crows. Or possibly...
Are they following us?
Durrani asked, somewhat rhetorically.
I thought that crows roosted by night,
replied Achillea, disquieted by the phenomenon.
Yes, they do,
came the elf's flat response.
This is not natural.
By now, Achillea was so tired that she felt her eyes might shut on their own. Her steps were leaden, and she was feeling a bit dizzy. The others felt similarly, with the exception of Cord and Robin, who had no need of sleep. It was Tentir who found a good spot to stop for the night. A wayward pine with thick, low branches, sticky with sap, and so fragrant that the smell might have inhibited sleep if the companions had not been so tired. They set Cord and Robin on watch, and then Achillea and the brothers passed out on a bed of springy pine needles, without even bothering to unfurl their bedrolls. They were awoken just 3 hours later, but not by their sentries. It was the hoarse cawing of crows that dragged them out of their slumber. Once again, hundreds of the birds were squawking madly nearby.
Choo-choo's braid,
cursed Tentir, unconsciously emulating his older brother.
Can we get no peace at all?
The maddening din continued, completely preventing a return to sleep, while at the same time threatening to draw unwanted attention.
We're leaving,
said Durrani. Grabbing his things, he crawled out from under the low pine branches and once again led the others even deeper into the woods. Behind them, the riotous cacophony continued unabated. After a time, the companions found themselves overlooking a valley, shrouded by night mist.
Down there,
said Tentir, pointing.
the mist will mask our movements and hide us from the enemy.
This boon could not have come at a better time, for as soon as the companions entered the fog, they heard a horn sound in the distance, back the way they had come.
They're looking for us.
Said Dureni caustically. Lack of sleep had made him irritable.
Still think those were Bloodfoots, Achillea?
Achillea disregarded the accusation in Dureni's tone and changed the subject.
This might sound mad, but I think those crows were following us.
That and more.
Dureni replied, the acid no longer in his voice.
Hopefully we can lose them in these mists.
I'm still so tired.
Complained Achillea.
I don't know how long I'll last.
You'll have to last at least a little while longer. We need to put as much distance as we can between us and those orcs. They'll search for us all night. What we really need is a better hiding spot.
The misty valley began to constrict, funneling the companions into a narrow gorge after they'd gone a half a mile or so. Luckily, there was no more noise from crows, and the war horn did not sound again.
Dureni, what did you mean earlier when you said that and more? What more? Earlier, I said I thought the crows were following us, and you said that and more. What did you mean by that?
I only meant that it seems like...
Look!
Said Tentir, pointing into the swirling mists. Through the vapors about 100 yards ahead, they could make out the shape of a cave. It was both large and of unusual shape. The mouth was wide enough to fit a wagon train, 80 feet long or more, but the height was out of proportion. A huge, long stone slab jutted out from the side of the gorge, like an awning over a hollow space below. In the fog and in the dark, it was impossible to say how deep the cut went.
This could be a good place to hide,
suggested Tentir.
It had better be. I can barely keep upright, and my eyes keep trying to close on their own,
said Achillea. She felt Cord pat her on the shoulder with a wooden hand, and she turned around to offer him a warm, sleepy smile.
Well, we will have to risk it,
said Dureni. Clearly he was not thrilled with this choice of hiding place. He unshouldered his bow and drew an arrow from his quiver before proceeding.
We should go and take a closer look.
It's better than sleeping out in the open,
said Tentir, imitating his brother and readying his own arrow.
And it looks empty.
The cave did seem empty. At least, they couldn't see anything moving inside. Dureni took the lead and started toward the cave, with the mists wrapping around his slight frame and closing in behind him. I mentioned before that I had a set-piece encounter prepared, and here we are. The party members don't know it, but this cave is the lair of a dangerous creature named Mombi. Mombi occasionally accepts bribes from the orcs, either to fight for them or simply to leave them alone. The money box that the companions currently carry was meant as such a payment by the Black Cloud tribe. In return, Mombi would have helped them drive off the intruding Bloodfoots. Of course, the payment was intercepted. There's a certain tasty irony in the bribe being delivered to its intended destination, but not by the intended couriers. Anyway, at the moment, even though it's night, and Mombi is nocturnal, he's currently asleep on a bed of furs and can't be seen by the party members, at least not yet. He can't be seen, but... The companions slowly and silently approached the cave, and the mists swirled around their frames as though trying to pull them into their gauzy embrace. Once again, they were in single file. The narrow gorge would not permit any different arrangement. Beyond the wide and shadowy stone mouth, the gorge began to incline sharply. Of course, at this point, the PC's intention was to use the cave as a shelter and hide out for the night, and then continue their journey in the morning. Quietly, they approached. They were so quiet, in fact, that when the sound came, it almost scared Achillea out of her skin. A ripping, sputtering sound like the bark being torn off the side of a tree sounded from somewhere inside the cave. Then there was silence again, followed by a second low, wet, snorting sound. The companions had frozen in their tracks at the first noise. The second made them stiffen, and when the sounds returned in a steady, rasping snore, they realized that something large was sleeping nearby, not 50 yards away. Tentir turned around and whispered.
Bear?
Something big.
Durrani whispered back.
Do we go back?
I don't want to go back. We still need to find somewhere to stop for the night, and there is nothing back the way we came. Maybe we can sneak by it.
Looking past the cave entrance, they could see that to keep going in this direction would be a risk. The slope of the gorge had made for a treacherous descent to get down here, but it was a sheer wall, impossible to climb for the next 100 yards on either side. So the only choices were forward or back.
I think we should go back,
said Tentir, looking shaken. Durrani turned to Achillea.
Break the tie. What do you think we should do?
Achillea scanned the area around the cave entrance. Moss-covered roots hung limply down over it, and seeing these, she remembered Cord's trick back at the dogwood. She regarded her wooden friend.
Could you command those roots if something came out of the cave?
She asked. Cord nodded.
Let's try to sneak by, then,
she said. Tentir winced, but Durrani nodded his approval.
I'll take the lead,
he said, creeping past Tentir.
Follow close, but not too close.
This is the most dangerous situation the PCs have faced in this story so far. Mombi is a 4-hit-die ogre, and although he's currently asleep, and deeply so, it would only take one misplaced step to wake him as the characters attempt to sneak by. Since none of my characters are of the thief class, none of them have any real skill at moving silently, but that doesn't mean they can't try, and it also doesn't mean they can't succeed. It'll just be tougher for them. Now, to be fair, Durrani and Tentir are hunters, so I think they might be a little better than average at moving without making noise. But I wonder what kind of chance would they have of getting past Mombi without waking him up. If a thief were here, I'd give advantage on this roll to reflect the overall favorable conditions. While, on the one hand, leading a group would be harder than going it alone, on the other, Mombi is some distance away, and even more, he's deeply asleep. Here's my ruling. I'll allow the PCs to roll a check as a group, but I'm taking back the advantage to reflect the extra difficulty. Also, partly because of the distance, and mostly because Mombi is asleep, I'll be generous and roll as if the whole group was a first-level thief. Despite that generosity, the rulebook tells me that the chance to succeed is only 20%. The roll. A 13! Huh, what do you know? I really did not expect them to succeed at this. The party is able to reach the valley floor by the cave mouth. From here, they can see the sleeping form of some hulking thing. At first, it looks like a boulder, but then it shifts, snoring loudly as it adjusts its position, and then falls back into slumber. It's difficult to tell what exactly the creature is. Something bigger than a man, but humanoid. It's covered in patches of dark hair that at first look like moss. It's heavily muscled, with tree trunk legs, broad shoulders, and bulging thews like coils of rope. Each of the companions has their heart in their throats as they begin to creep past, so slowly and so carefully, watching every step lest they should tread on a dry branch or loose rock. Thrasendia must have been watching, because, by some miracle, they managed to pass by the cave mouth without waking the sleeping monster. Then, just as they began to allow themselves to feel relief, the fog parts. One of the trees ahead is so full of crows that it is black with them, and its branches droop under their weight. Durrani has time to mutter,
No!
under his breath before the crows erupt in a chorus of brassy cawing. To the left, the sleeping monster snorts awake and sits up, looking around in a daze.
Entering combat.
I admit that I knew all along that the crows would ruin the PC's attempt to sneak past Mombi, but I honestly did not expect them to make that sneak check, and so now I feel they deserve some kind of reward for it. I'm giving them a surprise. It makes sense. The ogre was startled out of sleep by the crows, and realistically it would take a few moments before it knew what was going on. What will the companions do with their precious few seconds? I think Durrani looks at the terrain in front of them, and in an instant he understands that the incline they'd be forced to navigate to get out of the ravine would make flight unwise. For that reason, he fits his arrow to his bowstring, pulls it back to his ear, and in one swift motion, lets loose. Tentir can and will do the same, while Achillea can throw one of her knives. Cord can ready his spell of Entangle. I'll allow him to hold the action so that, even though he'll technically be using it in round 2, he'll be able to cast it before initiative gets rolled. Let's set the scene for a moment before we bring out the dice. The characters are about 24 feet away from the mouth of this cave, which is on the side of a ravine wall and near the bottom. Mombi is not very far inside the cave, only about 15 feet, so that puts about 40 feet between him and the PCs. With their missile fire, the PCs will be shooting up, but not by enough to make any mechanical difference, as the cave mouth is only a few feet above the ravine floor. Melee will be very awkward in this narrow space, so after firing, the companions will move up so they have a bit more room to maneuver. As Durrani noticed, if they should need to flee, the way ahead is a poor choice since the ravine wall ascends sharply. Going back the way they came is a better choice, but still not a good one, because of the cramped conditions and the eventual incline of the terrain. This is why Durrani has chosen to make a stand, hoping to get off an arrow or two before they meet the enemy outside the cave's opening. I hope that's enough info to picture the layout of this scene. Let's talk about Mombi for a minute now. Ogres have an armor class of 14 due to their thick hide, and they get 4+1 hit dice. I'll roll his hit points now. 19 hit points, which is over the halfway minute of 17. Mombi wields a club that does 1 to 10 points of damage on a hit. Oddly, the rules say nothing about adding a strength bonus, so I guess that damage roll is not modified by anything. As a 4-hit die monster, it will attack with a +2, however. Once again, the rules do not award any 2-hit bonus for the ogre's incredible strength. Perhaps it's offset by the creature's slowness. I don't know. Anyway, that's really about it for stats. Ogres are, more or less, just a big bag of hit points and muscles overall. Hopefully he won't connect with that club, as it could easily mean a one-shot kill for most of the PCs. Now, when Mombi is woken up by the noise of the crows, he sits bolt upright in his bed of furs, and almost immediately, there are 2 arrows and a dagger speeding his way. Let's go ahead and make those surprise round attack rolls now. Durrani's arrow needs a 13 to hit. The roll. 18. We're off to a good start. Damage will be just 1 point. The arrow grazes Mombi's flank. Tentu's shot. He also needs a 13 to hit. Haha, a 15. That's a hit for... Whoa! 6 points of damage. Tentu's arrow buries itself into Mombi's flank, and the ogre's face turns into a mask of lividity, surprise, and pain. It bellows out a series of orcish curse words as Achillea's flung dagger seeks its mark. Can we get a hat trick? A 7 is a miss, so no. She's not used to the weight of the new orcish dagger, and it falls short. That's it for round 1, but as Mombi rushes out of the cave, club in hand, Cord casts Entangle on the roots that dangle over the entrance. The spell listing in the Old School Essentials Advanced Fantasy Player's Tome does not say anything about how big an entangled creature can be, or if the creature's strength should modify the roll. I think Gavin Norman probably left it open specifically to encourage rulings based on circumstance, so that's what I'm going to do. There are strong roots present, but Mombi has the equivalent of an 18 in strength, so my ruling is that he'll save with advantage, and even if he fails, he'll only be entangled for 1 round. The target number to beat for his saving throw is 14. Here comes the rolls, using 2d20. I've got a 9 and a 19, so he does save, and even as the roots drop, looping around his neck and over his shoulders, the brute simply yanks them free of their rocky moorings and casts them aside, continuing to curse in Orcish. We can now begin round 2. Initiative. The party. 1. Mombi. 6. Not only is the ogre charging forward, but he's also on home turf. The PCs had already passed by him when the crows raised the alarm, so it's quite easy for Mombi to box them in and cut off their retreat. As for his attack, I'll pick a target at random. It's Cord. He's the biggest of the group, so that makes sense. Cord has an AC of 14, and Mombi needs to roll a 12 or better to hit. The roll. A 12 on the die is just enough. Mombi's club comes whistling towards the construct with tremendous force. Wood connects with wood, doing... 9 points of damage. There is a deafening bang, accompanied by a crack, as the club strikes Cord and splits his torso. Cord is almost rent in 2 pieces, and now has just 1 hit point remaining. I will allow that, in the few seconds it took Mombi to rip off the entangling roots, that all characters were able to draw their melee weapons. Durrani will strike with his sword. This time, he'll need a 14 to hit. A 12 misses. The target number is the same for Tentir, rolling to hit. A 6 is no good. I have to decide, does Cord stand and fight or fall back? There's really nowhere to go, so I think he'll attack. A 15 hits, and his new orcish battle axe is christened with Mombi's blood. Damage will be 5 points. Mombi is now at 7 of his original 19. Before the round ends, I think Achillea will do what she can to help and cast Shrink on, not Mombi, but his club. This choice means there's no saving throw to make. The club shrinks by 20%, and so any future damage it deals will be at -2. Mombi barely notices the transformation in his weapon, but he does notice that he's bleeding everywhere. A morale check is in order. Ogres have a morale score of 10, so it's unlikely he'll stop attacking, but it's worth a roll. On 2d6. An 8 is close, but not close enough. Mombi stays. Spitting out a great dollop of blood, he surges forward. In his rage, his target will once again be determined at random. A 4 means it's Cord again. This could be bad. The PCs had better win the initiative, or we might be about to lose our first character. Round 3. Initiative. The party. 3. Mombi. 2. That's good. With some luck, the party will cut this monster down this round. Dureni stabs up and into the ogre's thigh. But with an 11, the blade fails to pierce the tough skin. Tentir dives into a roll, coming up just behind the monster. He attempts to spear his blade into the ogre's back. A 10 is no good. He miscalculates and cuts nothing but empty air. Achillea will slash out with her remaining knife. A 15 hits, but for just 1 point of damage. Cord is practically falling apart, bisected from shoulder to waist, but all the same, he chops down with a double-handed swing, aiming for the ogre's head. But with a 2, he misses. Wow, that round was not a good one for the PCs, and it might get worse. Call me superstitious, but I have a bad habit of killing axe-wielding fighters early on in my game. I hope this won't be the 3rd season in a row to see that happen. Mombi swings his still mighty club at Cord, needing a 12 to hit. An 11. Yikes, that was way too close. Let's hope that the PCs can do better in Round 4. Initiative. The party. A 2. Mombi. A 1. Okay then. I feel this round will be the last. Let's find out if my instincts are any good. Dureni tries to gash the ogre's thigh once again on the backstroke. A 19. Yes, way to go, Dureni. This time, the elf's blade cuts through the ogre's tough skin, drawing a red line along the inside of one thigh. A d6 for damage. 5 points. It's a deep cut. Blood immediately starts to run from the wound, and Mombi stumbles. Tentir takes advantage of the momentary weakness and aims another blow. This time, he is determined not to miss. The roll. A 3. Mombi stumbles drunkenly, moving in a way Tentir does not expect. The elf's short sword fails to connect. Achillea slashes out with her dagger again, but a 6 doesn't even come close. It's up to Cord to finish this monster. He needs a 14 to hit with his battle axe. He aims for the head once again, and with a 17 brings the heavy blade right down on top of Mombi's skull. Any roll but a 1 will finish this fight. Here goes. I've got a 3. The blade embeds itself right in the center of the ogre's forehead, between its beady black eyes. Blood oozes from the wound, painting a crimson stripe down the primitive face, before the monster falls down, dead. Thanks for listening to Tale of the Manticore. If you're enjoying the show and would like to help to support it, there are lots of ways to do so. You can recommend the show online or to friends. You can like and repost episode announcements on social media. You can pick up one of my offerings on DriveThruRPG. You can purchase a Tale of the Manticore t-shirt at www.beararts.store. And finally, you can rate or review the show on your podcatcher of choice. I am grateful for all of your support. Let's hear another of your kind listener reviews. This one was left by None of Your Business on Audible. None of Your Business writes, "The best RPG podcast out there. This is an absolutely fantastic podcast that captures the true D&D heart in OSR feel and values, and is fantastic inspiration for anyone doing fantasy RPG solo play or being a dungeon/game master. Amazingly well done and presented. Well, you know I'm grateful for this review? It's none of your business. Sorry, I should have led with a dad joke incoming. That's on me. Seriously though, I am very grateful for the kind review. Thank you very much. And is this my first review from Audible? I think it might be. Anyway, speaking of gratitude, this episode has my usual duo of Kai Allen and Kevin Berenger in their roles as the Elven brothers, Dureni and Tentir. My thanks as always to you both for your generous contributions. For anybody curious to learn a bit more about Tale of the Manticore, I keep a blog where I post all kinds of show and RPG related stuff. You'll find art, maps, tables, crafts, and show notes. You can find it at taleofthemanticore.blogspot.com. To get in touch with me, I am at ManticoreTale on X, Tale of the Manticore Podcast on Instagram, or taleofthemanticore@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. The adventure will continue on the next episode of Tale of the Manticore. It's the story where chaos rolls.